Welcome back, students. In the previous lecture of this video series, we have studied about the crystal structure. After that, crystal lattice and the concept of basis. Unit cell was discussed in the previous lecture, but a very basic definition of unit cell was discussed. So, today we will continue that topic and we will discuss primitive lattice cell, the difference between primitive lattice cell and the unit cell, and then lattice parameters. Lattice parameters are very important on the basis of these parameters, Breve lattices are defined. So let us start today's lecture with our next slide. As we know that to construct a crystal structure, a well-defined crystal lattice and the basis is required. When each and every point of the crystal lattice is filled with a suitable basis, then crystal structure is formed. In the given slide, a crystal lattice which is two-dimensional is shown and a dot-shaped basis is shown. Initially, the lattice points are shown by small dots, and when this basis or bigger dot is placed at the position of that small dot, we obtain this crystal structure. So it is the very basic definition of crystal structure, that how crystal structure or how the crystals are formed. Then the unit cell, which we have already discussed, that in crystalline solids, atom or molecules are arranged to form a repetitive pattern. Such a fundamental grouping of particles which is repeated to form a crystal structure is called unit cell. So we may define as the unit cell is the basic structure of atoms or molecules and with their arrangement, so that the repetitive application of that arrangement can produce a proper crystal lattice. It is defined that the dimension of unit cell depends on the dimension of crystal lattice. As in the given diagram, a two-dimensional crystal structure is shown. So if the crystal structure is two-dimensional, then it is obvious that the unit cell will be two-dimensional. Now the primitive cell. Primitive cell is a unit cell that contains one lattice point only at the corners. Now we have shown a two-dimensional lattice. In this structure, if we discuss about A, unit cell A, these all are unit cells. If we discuss about unit cell A, then it is clear that there are only four corners. If we name them number 1, number 2, number 3 and number 4. Only four corners are there, and at each and every corner one atom is there. Similarly, if we define B structure, again 1, 2, 3 and 4. Only four corners are there, and again at each and every corner there is an atom. So these two structures A and B, these two are unit cells as well as primitive cells, because the repetitive action or the repetitive application of these cells will produce a complete crystal structure. And second point, at each and every corner a lattice point is there, and with it no other atom exists within this primitive cell, except the corners. Like structure C, if we check this structure C, if we name the corners 1, 2, 3 and 4, again 4 atoms are there, but 2 additional atoms are also there between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So these 2 atoms do not exist at the corners. So this structure C is a unit cell, but it is not a primitive cell because the atoms or the lattice point are not at the corners only. Similarly, like D, 2 atoms are there or the 2 lattice points are there which are not at the corners. So that's why it is not a primitive cell. So with the help of these 4 structures, it is quite clear that if a unit cell has the crystal lattice points at the corners only, then it may be defined as a primitive cell. So each and every primitive cell is a unit cell, but all unit cells need not be a primitive cell. Then next slide. Again some examples are there. If we check these 6 unit cells, which one is primitive, which one is not primitive? First one is primitive. It's okay because only 4 points are there which exist at their corners. Point second is also a primitive cell. Number third, it is not a primitive cell due to these 2 atoms, or the 2 lattice points. Point number 4, the unit cell number 4 is not a primitive cell because these 4 atoms are there which are not at the corners. So this is not a primitive cell. Structure number 3 is not a primitive cell. If we check number 5 structure, then this dot is at center which is not at corner, so it is not a primitive cell. In unit cell number 6, if we check these 3 atoms or the 3 lattice points are not at the corners, so it is not a primitive cell. So out of these 6 structures, only first 2, 1 number and 2 number are primitive cells, rest all are non-primitive cells. Now a very important phenomena, that is lattice parameter. As in the previous slides, we have shown different type of unit cells. Some unit cells are like rectangle structured, some are square structured. Now if we want to define the properties of these structures, then we have to take care of some important parameters defined as lattice parameters. So first of all, the basic definition. A unit cell represents the symmetry of crystal structure. It is the building block of the crystal structure. A unit cell can be completely defined in terms of 3 vectors A, B, C, where the length of the vectors ABC, which is the mode of vector, and the angles between them are alpha, beta and gamma are specified. These parameters are called as lattice parameters. So intercept on axes are AB and C, and interfacial angles are alpha, beta and gamma. Now let us check these parameters in the given diagram. In this diagram, we have shown a three-dimensional lattice structure. Total 8 points are there. All points are there at the corner of the unit cell. So it is a primitive unit cell also. If we take the central point, that is O, as our reference point, this is reference point. This O particle or the O lattice point, it is reference point. Then the minimum distance of the next lattice point along any axis is defined as the length of the vectors. For example, along this direction, it is a random direction, depends on the chosen unit cell. If the gap between O and capital A point is small a, then this small a is defined as crystal lattice length of that vector. Similarly, along another direction, the gap is B, and along third direction, the gap is C. So A, B, C are the different gaps due to the lattice structure, or we may say due to the various type of atoms which exists at some distance from the central reference atom. So we have defined the length of the vectors in terms of small a, small b, and small c. These three lattice parameters are defined, which are basically the minimum distance between two lattice points. Now let us define the angles or the interfacial angle. If we have defined small a is intercept on a particular axis, then the angle between remaining two axes is defined as first interfacial angle alpha. So to form alpha angle, we should not use length small a, or we may say the angle between vector B and vector C is defined as alpha. Similarly, if we want to define beta, then angle between vector A and vector C is defined as angle beta. Similarly, for angle gamma, we have to check the angle between vector A and vector B. So vector A, vector B, vector C are the three vectors along three crystal axis directions. And the angle between these three vectors are defined as alpha, beta, gamma. But we have to check that the alpha is the angle between vector B and C, beta is the angle between vector A and C, and gamma is the angle between vector A and vector B. These are the 6 lattice parameters which are very important to classify Bravais lattice. Now, what is the significance of lattice parameters? If we know about the lattice parameters, all 6 lattice parameters, then we easily construct a unit cell related with that lattice parameters. It is the first application. Form and actual size of unit cell can be determined by values of intercepts and interfacial angles. Second, by taking any lattice point as the origin, all other points on the lattice can be obtained by a repeated operation of lattice vectors A, B, and C. If we take any lattice point as our reference point. Then with the help of these 6 lattice parameters, we can easily construct the crystal structure. Now today's assignment. The first question is, what is the difference between unit cell and the primitive cell? And the second question is, define lattice parameters. Very basic questions are there. So all the students who are studying in MSc Final Physics at Government Nehru Memorial PG College must submit the written answers of these assignments regularly, because due to corona pandemic it is not possible to take regular class, or the we may say that regular blackboard class. So this video lecture series is considered as your regular class. So you have to write the answers properly, and you have to submit the answers in the form of some screenshot or picture, and upload these answers in our WhatsApp group. So I hope you have got some points from this lecture. See you in the next lecture. Have a nice day.